We've got some Marvel ideas here today. Nate, my boy, my dog. Some call you Nate Dog. I call you friend.
Wow, that's deep.
We want to take a look today at 5 Marvel villains that need to have their own games. They need to. It's not even a request. I am outside Marvel picketing for this right now. And so Nate is here with me helping during our big, really important protest that will change the entire world outside Marvel. And we're going to jump right into it because the first one we have is Loki. He is at the height of his popularity right now. It's actually kind of missing out to not capitalize on that. I mean, the Loki fangirls are basically a cult at this point.
Or fanboys.
I don't want, don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but it's mostly fangirls.
Yeah, this is basically the time to do this.
Absolutely, the MCU.
With Loki, with the MCU, like you said, he seemed to have a surge of popularity ever since the original Avengers movie. And it seems like Loki is actually one of the mainstay villains in the Marvel universe now.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of different options you can actually do with the Loki character. Just the fact that he's mischievous. He can be a villain or a hero.
Yeah, or an anti-hero or whatever you want him to be. That is interesting too. And speaking of the time to do it, they're making a show now. Disney Plus
exactly.
show. So it's even further down that road. And he has illusion abilities, so he can kind of be mischievous with that, like you said. It's almost like shape-shifting powers, even though he's not really changing his shape. He is appearing to change his shape.
Yeah.
He's playful. He's a fun character. He's not Deadpool, but he's a little bit down that, in that vein in terms of just having a good time and not being a very serious character, but having these aspirations. I think you could make it kind of comedic and kind of serious at the same time with that, and also tie it into the lore of Asgard.
Yeah, and there's a lot you can do with his illusion ability. You could have him turn. You could play as like Trump if you want to. You could play as Biden. You could play as like Michael Jackson. The possibilities are endless.
Why would you be any of these people? You are right, though. By the way,
the possibilities are endless. You're not wrong. There's a lot you could do with those characters.
There is a lot. You could have him pretty much turn into anybody or anything that you want him to. I find it troubling that you went immediately to politics, but you could do anything with that, and I'm glad you don't work for Marvel.
I'm throwing out ideas.
I'm just glad you don't work for Marvel here. We're gonna end up with a safe space idea here, basically.
That was actually my next point. That was my next point.
So the next one we have is Dr. Octopus. There's, again, a lot you could do with this character. He is a villain, but he becomes a likable villain eventually in the Superior Spider-Man arc. And that's kind of why I thought that you should tie this into the current Marvel Spider-Man universe at some point. You essentially would be making a Superior Spider-Man game, but it would open with a prelude with Doc Ock. So maybe you have something like the Dying Wish storyline at the beginning where he sort of becomes Spider-Man, and then he's this evil-ish Spider-Man, and then he becomes a better Spider-Man over time and sort of becomes a good person over time, or the best person that Otto Octavius is capable of being in his deranged state. There also is setup for this in the current Marvel Spider-Man universe because of his neurological disorder, I think it is. It's like a disease that he has that'll incapacitate him over time.
Yeah, I think the time is now for that.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe not right now. But
well, in the next 5 years. Because I could see you doing the Miles Morales, another Peter story, and then transitioning into this. And you could bring Peter back then if you want to.
Right.
The comics did that too.
Right. I think that would be a cool idea, because then you could have like his Doc Ock legs, and like his... Sorry,
be careful how you say that.
I am full of jokes today.
Oh, okay.
You could bring in like his, The
Spider-Man
Yeah,
legs.
Exactly. And there's just like a lot of cool options that you can do with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you actually wouldn't need to rework the rigging of the character models either, because if you had the first level or two where you play as Doc Ock, or the first little bit, you have those arms, and then later on when you're Superior Spider-Man, you have the same arms. They'd just be retextured.
Yeah, it's a new skin.
So it's not like you're having to rework the entire game based on that. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot you could do there, I think, too, especially with him being a very sympathetic villain. And he suffered from years of abuse as a child. You could very easily do flashbacks to that if you wanted to make him sympathetic.
Right.
I think you need to be intentional about how dark you want to make this game, because Doc Ock, depending on how in-depth you get with his character, he was abused as a child.
Right.
He was mistreated horribly. He had a pretty tragic life. this is a dark character that a lot of people just see, oh, that guy with the metal arms from Spider-Man. But when he's written well, there's a lot more to the character than that. And I think he is definitely deserving of being given that spotlight. So the next one we have is Green Goblin, but it's not any Green Goblin. Nate, you should point this out because I think this is your favorite Green Goblin.
It is, actually. Yeah. This is my favorite Spider-Man villain.
Oh.
And the funny thing is this was only a villain in a movie.
Well, kind of. I mean, he was in the original comics, but he got put on your radar from the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that is Harry Osborn.
Yeah, Harry Osborn's Green Goblin.
Yeah, or New Goblin, as they call him in the Raimi-verse.
Yeah, I guess you could kind of... Obviously, it wouldn't be a Raimi-verse thing, but you could take the ideas from that. Because the ideas in the original comics are very convoluted.
Right.
They're good, but they're weird, honestly. I think you could simplify it a lot like the movies did and tell a good story with this.
Right. I think my favorite thing about the Raimi... Not saying this is what it has to be about, but
my
favorite thing about New Goblin from that was actually his outfit.
Yeah.
I loved his mask with the goggles and everything, but anyways, there's a lot you could do with Harry Osborn as Green Goblin. You could touch on his mental illness and his mixed feelings with Norman Osborn, his dad.
Yeah, his friendship with Peter.
Yeah.
I think you pointed that one out to me because we often see Peter's side of that friendship. We don't see how Harry feels because Harry, in a way, feels betrayed by Peter at certain points. I think sadly, the most that we see that other than the Raimi trilogy in mainstream media that's not comics.
Are you going to say it?
Is the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
You're going to say it?
Yeah. And that's the sad thing is if you haven't seen the Raimi movies, which you're doing yourself a disservice if you haven't, the only other place that you see this in mainstream media outside of the comics, and I suppose the 90s TV show and Spectacular Spider-Man is that. So it's more just reintroducing the idea to maybe younger viewers or viewers who haven't seen a very good interpretation of it. And a lot of the interpretations we've seen are weird. I mean, the interpretation from MTV's Spider-Man of this was a little odd. It was good, but it was odd. Or
The Amazing Spider-Man was kind of weird.
It was terrible. Or from the Spectacular Spider-Man show, it was good, but it was almost more like Harry was a druggie.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of different versions of this, and I think that as much as I like a lot of those, they could very easily cut through the filler and sort of get more to the heart of the issue and have their own interpretation of why this friendship fractured.
Right. And you can actually see it from Harry's side.
Yeah, that's important because if you want to make a villain game and you don't want it to just be edgelord simulator like Hatred or something, of that vein, you need to actually make the villain make sense.
Right.
Otherwise, the only people playing this are going to be perhaps trench coat wielding individuals. Yeah. So that's the thing is you have to be kind of discerning of where you want to push this game.
So Leon from Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, Leon from Kingdom Hearts will be playing this game. Also, you have the access to the glider, pumpkin bombs, hand-to-hand combat. I mean, he's very skilled at hand-to-hand combat. He has enhanced dexterity, health, strength. There's a lot you could do with this character in terms of gameplay, just like you could in terms of his actual storyline. Oh, and the next one, okay. Look, we're going to take this one slow.
Okay.
It's Magneto. He has a really dark past. So if people don't know about his dark past, I mean, he has one of the most tragic pasts in comic book history in terms of being a villain. He actually was in the concentration camps.
Yeah, wasn't he specifically in Auschwitz?
He was in the movies, and I believe in some of the comics. And it's changed over the years. Okay. I mean, there's been different interpretations of where he was, but he was essentially in the Nazi concentration camps. He was mistreated horribly. A good chunk of his family was killed. I mean, this was a really tragic and horrendous start to him. And it sort of instills in Magneto the cruelty of people, of humans, and it shows why he has this really messed up view of people. I really do think that if you're going to make a Magneto story, while you would have to be careful how you handle that aspect of it, especially in today's climate of everyone getting angry at anything even slightly controversial.
I'm angry at you just now.
You're angry at me for mentioning history exists.
Exactly.
I get it. I understand. So I think you need to be careful with that, but something like Wolfenstein was able to include a playable level in a camp like this. Actually playable.
And they did it well.
And they did it well, and they showed the horrors of what it was, and it wasn't a joke, but it also didn't tame it down just to be non-controversial.
Right.
You would have to do that to establish this background, I think. And You'd have to go years ahead to his connection with Xavier. I think you had a little more to say about that.
Yeah, and with the Xavier and Magneto, you'd have to show the fractured relationship with them as part of the story, obviously. But again, like we said with Harry, you'd have to show it now from Eric's standpoint.
Yeah.
Which is not something that you see a lot.
No, the best place you see that is the Fox movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Which everyone hates, so I probably just pissed somebody off by mentioning them.
Someone's like, oh, Fox!
We both liked them.
Yeah, they were great.
Overall.
Yeah, especially X-Men Origins. That was the best.
Shut up. You are right, though, in terms of showing that.
And I think you can do that well, because with Magneto's backstory, he is a very sympathetic villain. In the sense that if they did his story well, you can actually see his point of view.
Oh, 100%, especially with the starting in a camp.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you see how he develops this hatred and anger about how people... I mean, it's how the Jews were treated by the Nazis, and then he sees it happening again. Like, in his mind, it's, oh, the new Jews of this age are the mutants.
Right.
So he sees it in the sense of that's how they're going to be treated. They're going to be rounded up, slaughtered, cruelly, and he's trying to protect them.
And in many ways, they are.
Yeah, actually. There's a ton, like...
With the Sentinels and...
Well, X-Men is about bigotry and racism. Right. X-Men was tackling the idea of racism in comics before it was okay to talk about it.
Right.
You know, so that's a really interesting thing to point out there. I also think that actually could really land in today's day and age with a lot of the issues that we are going through if it was handled tastefully, because a lot of those issues are coming back up and being a point of discussion again after people trying not to talk about them. You know? So I think that's an interesting point. I also think that his powers would be really fun. I mean, again, obviously you have to balance the fun with the serious storytelling, but this is a game. You want people to enjoy their time there. And I think that, you know, imagine the first level, imagine you're in the camp or something like that, and you rip the front gate off or something. Right. Almost like in the movie before he gets clocked. Or imagine later on, maybe it flashes forward to him later in his life, and he's freeing mutants from a prison, and he rips the doors off the walls, or you're able to bend all the bars to the side and walk through and bend them back. You know, you could have almost like force powers.
Yeah, or like if people are shooting at you, you can like catch the bullets and like launch them back at them. And...
Or the idea of turning the guns back around on them and shooting them.
There's a lot of cool ideas here.
Yeah, there's a ton you can do with them. But you have to think that level of interactivity with metal in your environment would be revolutionary.
Right.
It would also be really hard to design this. But... most video game companies are extremely talented in terms of coming up with ways to do these things, and they would have years to do so.
Right.
I think this would be an incredible way to relaunch interest in the X-Men brand, especially now that they're transitioning over to the MCU, without going the fractured route of the Avengers and Spider-Man and doing all these different things. You could very easily set this in the world of Spider-Man or something else, just off in the distance.
Yeah, there's a lot you could do with Magneto.
Yeah, even Genosha.
Yeah, you could have it. You could have Magneto kind of be in charge of this
mutant state.
Yeah, this mutant state, and you could have him like interact with things of the state itself, like maybe buy like shops or customize it or whatever.
Well, yeah, and that's something we'll talk about even more in our next idea, because that idea would be even bigger in this one.
Yeah.
And that's Victor Von Doom, Dr. Doom.
This is my favorite supervillain.
Oh, absolutely. You should talk more about this one.
So I think the game, kind of like with other ones, you would show his relationship with Reed, but again, now from Victor's angle. There's a lot you could do with him as a character. Like you could have him use either technology or magic. I know, like in the comics, he kind of uses both.
Yeah.
But you know, you could either just pick magic or just pick technology or do both. Kind of depends on what you want to do. But kind of going along with the Genosha standpoint, but now with Latveria, which is kind of Dr. Doom's base, like his fort or whatever.
Yeah, his own country.
Yeah.
It's his Wakanda.
Yeah, that's actually a good.
Well, that's the thing. If you've seen Black Panther and you don't know anything about Dr. Doom, Black Panther owns his own nation. He's the leader of it. He's basically their king. You could easily do that and sort of establish that as your home base.
Yeah, and you could do something like in Assassin's Creed 2 or even 3, where they had the homestead. I know in 3 or number 2 they had the town.
It's a very complicated name to say.
I'm not even going to pronounce it. I'm going to butcher it. But you had the town or the homestead where you can actually buy shops. You could buy items to put in there. You could buy decorations. I think you could incorporate that into Latveria.
Yeah.
Where you are Dr. Doom. You're the leader of this country.
You could almost have Sim City style.
Exactly. You can kind of control things. You can decorate it. You can customize it. You can, if you want like a shop here, you can put it there. You know, whatever you want.
You can have concubines.
You can have concubines.
Tons of them.
You can have
very beautiful.
You can have like your dildo shop if you want it.
Your Bilbo shop? What?
Yeah,
like,
your Bilbo shop.
Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings things.
If you want it.
Okay, that's cool. I like that he's a fan of that.
Maybe he's a big fan of The Hobbit.
Yeah, I like that. The movies,
exactly.
Specifically, not the book.
Exactly.
There is a lot you could do with this, especially. I do agree with you. I think that he might be the one with the most possibilities in terms of gameplay.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's a lot to them. Even if you go like in the movies, the Fantastic Four movies, I know they're terrible, but there was an ability where he actually kicked off the Silver Surfer off of his board, and then he actually gained the Silver Surfer's powers. And he was like, I know it sounds like a meme, but I'm saying there is a lot of possibilities you can go with Dr. Doom.
That's where you go to reference to the possibilities of Doom is Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I actually
like that movie as a kid.
Okay, wow, I'm going to disregard that last idea completely, and instead I'm going to bring up Infamous Iron Man.
Okay.
Because I think that would be a much better route to go than Rise of the Silver Surfer. I'm sorry, but
it's a good idea.
They improvised that. We had a list here that we wrote out. He brought that up. Okay,
I don't
endorse the Rise of the Silver Surfer here. You could very easily go the Infamous Iron Man route where you work into sort of becoming an anti-hero too at some point if you want to. I think it really depends, and I think that should be saved for a sequel if you made one. Because I think we'd want a proper Doctor Doom game before we got an Infamous Iron Man game.
Right.
Because Infamous Iron Man is almost him stepping in to fill in for the gap left by Tony Stark.
Yeah, that would be a sequel game.
And he's not the only one who did that, too. There's also Riri Williams, but regardless, I think that would be interesting, but not in the main game. And this game would be more based on intelligence. Dr. Doom is one of the most intelligent people in the Marvel Universe, especially in terms of human beings.
Right.
So
he rivals Reed Richards.
Absolutely. And it would be really interesting to see that point of view with Doom as the good guy in this case, for sure. So, hey, these are our 5 ideas for for villains that we would want to see get games sort of in the vein of superhero games from Marvel specifically. We definitely will be doing this for DC as well. Let us know some of your ideas in the comments down below. Did you enjoy this? What are your thoughts on our reasoning? Does Nate lose some credibility in your eyes for liking Rise of the Silver Surfer? He didn't mind.
It's an untapped gold mine.
So here's the it's like Rise of the Silver Surfer memes.
Exactly.
That's the Fantastic Four memes. That should be Reddit.
Untapped gold mine here.
Be sure to check the description below where we've got the Discord, Reddit, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon. It's all down there. The new Let's Play channel where Nate and I hang out, play some games with T as well. And we'll see you in the next one. Have a great day and stay shway.